To discuss all of this further, I'm joined by our international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Welcome.
Hello.
It's always great to see you. So these protests come as Donald Trump is slipping in the polls a bit. Can you tell us a bit more where the president's approval ratings stand?
Well, look, there have been a bunch of polls coming out in over the past week. So we're going to take a look at a few of those big polls, which all show pretty much the same thing, that Donald Trump is underwater when it comes to the overall approval ratings, that a majority of Americans disapprove of his job performance, of his performance as a president. You see the Quinnipiac University poll there, 38 only approve, 56 disapprove. The Reuters poll is very interesting. The 36% of Americans who approve of Donald Trump's job rating, that's down 4 points in just 1 week. 1 week ago, he was at 40% approval. Now he's at 36% approval. And the last one, I'm going to move back a little bit. The last one is the Fox News poll. That poll, 41% approval, 59% of disapproval for the U.S. president. That number, 59, according to the Fox News poll, is the highest disapproval rating that Donald Trump has ever had, whether it's in his second term or during his first term. Now, obviously, this is largely driven by the question of the economy, and that is a problem for Donald Trump because the economy was always Donald Trump's strong suit, the polling issue where he polled the best, and Reuters went deep into the economic numbers, and his approval on economy is just at 29%, the lowest economic rating for Donald Trump ever, and lower ratings on the economy than even Joe Biden, who was not doing great on the economy at the end of his term. Cost of living is even worse for Donald Trump. Only 1 in 4 Americans approve of his handling of the cost of living. Obviously, this depends if you're a Republican or a Democrat. The standing remains strong among Republicans, but his numbers are worrying even among Republicans, especially on the economy. With this number, the share of Republicans who disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of the economy has jumped 7 points in just a week, from 27% who disapprove, from 27 who disapprove to 34 who disapprove. So the direction that these numbers are going are also not a good sign for Donald Trump.
Yeah, spelling trouble there. And this, of course, it's all happening ahead of midterms for this fall. So that's got to be something the president is thinking about. And there's another issue, though, also weighing down his approval ratings, and that's the war in Iran. How do they view U.S. involvement?
Well, there have been a few polls who are looking now that we've already passed the 1 month mark of that war, and how people view that war, whether they support the U.S.'s military action in Iran or not. The Fox News poll showing that 42% of Americans do support that war, but 58% of them oppose the war. So still a majority of Americans opposed to the war in Iran. Similar numbers, even worse numbers for Donald Trump in the Reuters poll. And Reuters, again, having done that poll within 1 week, there is -2 on the approval and +2 on the disapproval. So again, the numbers are not going in the right direction for Donald Trump. But there again, there is a partisan divide on that issue, and it is pretty extreme. Support for the U.S. military action in Iran, according to that Fox News poll, it's 77% among Republicans, only 28% of independents, 12% of Democrats. But if you look at the breakdown among Republicans, 90% of MAGA, self-described MAGA Republicans, Make America Great Again, support the war. Not so much so, still a majority, but way less among MAGA Republicans, who are traditionally actually more hawkish, more interventionist, more in favor of going and doing those wars abroad. But there's also a growing generational divide, even within the MAGA movement. Older, more pro-intervention, pro-Israel voters and MAGA voters seem to be more in favor of the military action, while the younger generation are more America first. They're less inclined to support a war in the Middle East, less inclined also to be a steadfast supporter and ally of Israel. And that is true. You see that in the podcast sphere, the influencer sphere on the right. And the question is, what will happen if there is a ground intervention by the Americans? The question of U.S. boots on the ground could vastly change the numbers that we've been just talking about, because a lot of people who are saying that they support the war right now say that could change if I see U.S. boots on the ground. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. One thing I'll end with is the symbol of that divide, that generational divide, was very clear at CPAC, this gathering of conservative Americans, between the two figures that are coming out as potential replacements or successors to Donald Trump in 2028. The vice president, J.D. Vance, he's 41 years old. He's the younger generation, less interventionist, more America first, anti-war. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, he's more of the hawkish, older generation. He's only 55, but he's still the older generation, and more along the lines of the sort of traditional Republicans. And you're seeing that it's still quite a minority within the Republican Party, but you're seeing some small cracks starting to appear when it comes to the war in Iran.
Kethevane, thank you so much for breaking all of that down with us. I'm sure the political advisors to the president have a lot to study with this latest polling data. And that's Kethevane Gorjestani, our International Affairs editor.